you so much, Yancy, for the invitation and audience. I really hope I can contribute today. So whatever I say, I really want to engage with you, collaborate with you, think with you as co-creators of the National System of Innovation. The white paper says it belongs to all of us. So I'm always glad for invitations to be in spaces like this where we can co-create and co-think. So I want to share my screen and my presentation. Yancy introduced me as the person that is leading the South African Innovation Summit. And I've got news today that I have given over that function to a young, inspiring, African, super intelligent man called Buntu Majaja. From the 1st of March, I handed over to him. So there's a new era for the Innovation Summit, and I think it's a relevant era. He's got a heart for it. It has always been a social enterprise, although we always went in as a PTY Limited into industry for good reason. But now it's handed over, and my new journey is to get funding into Africa and South Africa to fund tech startups. So this is kind of an announcement, the first place where I can say this as a big change, I think, as an ecosystem player. It's handed over to the next generation, and I'm looking forward because it's going to change everything. So today I'm going to talk about the commercialization of intellectual property. And if you think about the work we've done in the Innovation Summit, yes, it is an event, but the event was always a clock to accelerate the economy around technology startups. And where do we find the technology startups? We find them in garages, in kitchens, and universities and colleges. So the places where people gather and think and come up with new ideas, experiment and find things. And then they think, where to now? You know, how do I make an impact with this? I can see the potential, but how do I put it into the market where it is not just delivered in an academic paper or to my own family or making my backyard better? But how do I scale this into society? And that was, in a very high level, the work we've done at the Innovation Summit. We've always tried to showcase, connect, and capacitate. Those three things were the things that we did. It was frustrating that it's always just 3 days. We grew to attract 56 countries and 3,600 people. And after COVID, I doubt that we ever want to go back to that. I think a hybrid event where we can make more useful contacts, maybe 500 people, and the rest access online for free, where people can actually participate, but there's not a cost to that, is maybe a more elegant model. So COVID has taught us many things. And the one part that we really managed to get right in the last 2 years was to create the missing piece, and that is to create a fund to start serving in this space from seed, when you're just out in the marketplace, to Series A. And I want to bring in some commercial terms here that might not be familiar or comfortable to everybody, but that means when you've proven your business and you actually want to scale it and grow it aggressively. And that's where most money sits, in the private sector, to support this space. But we've got this massive gap in the beginning. So we started this firm called Anza Capital. Anza is a Tsonga word called, that means to grow plentiful. It's actually spelled with a D, but because we are creators, we just use the concept of the word because our designer wanted 4 letters, not 5 letters. So it's Anza Capital, meaning to grow in great numbers. And our mission is to bring money into the early stages of commercialization, because that's the space it's needed, and that's the space private sector doesn't want to play because the risk is too high. And that's the space that there's just not enough government money to really make a big impact. So we believe that to work with, and I'm going to say this, I might be slashed to say this is elitist, but if you work with the cleverest people in society across Africa, you've got a leverage point. And those are the people who are the creators and the people who design new products and services that want to make an impact that will be a lasting impact. So if we look at Africa, and I am going to challenge this audience to say, in South Africa, we always think in terms of rands, and we think in terms of our economy, which consists of 60 million people. And we somehow forget that we are part of this continent of Africa, which is a huge economy with all kinds of legislation that's changing, like the agreements across borders now in SADC, which suddenly makes your economy from 60 million to 1.2 billion. It's a different market. It becomes attractive. Across the world, people are starting to notice, oh, there's something happening here in Africa. And the money is starting to flow into Africa. And this should also talk to the national agenda and the creators and the universities and the scientists and the technologists in society. So we haven't tracked properly for many years, but suddenly we've got a lot of serious trackers. What's happening in this space in Africa? So I'm going to quote the Partech report. It's really something that you can go and look up if you haven't read it. But it says what's happening in the tech startup space of technologists. And I said it's not just universities, it's also kitchens and garages. So according to these reports, they say that there's a $42 trillion gap in early stage funding. So now, if we say, oh, we come up with all these fantastic intellectual properties at universities, but they don't hit the market, that's the reason. We need funding to get products from universities into the market, from anywhere into the market, from your head into the market. So that is the challenge. And then there's all kinds of trends that I think is worth taking note of. In Africa, and I'm going to say Africa because I see that as our marketplace, and just 10 years ago, I just want to say that every single venture capitalist said, come to South Africa, prove your idea, and then you jump to Europe because that's where you're going to earn in dollars. Our mission is to say, come to South Africa, be a South African, create and expand in Africa. It's a completely different model. It's new things to navigate, and it's a new space to co-create. So that's our mission. And I hope some people in this audience will help us with you to create the truth of that mission. So there's a few things that I just want to highlight here. 20% of the world's population live in Africa, with 60% under the age of 25. So the youth is our target audience. 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa. That's something to notice. People are moving to cities and spending more. Rapid technology adoption causes innovation to leapfrog. And that's why Africa is doing so incredibly well in fintech. I mean, we're leading the world in fintech solutions from Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa. Africa has the world's highest entrepreneurship rate. Isn't that amazing? Startups lack access to growth capital that can help them take off. So what's easy in Silicon Valley is exceptionally difficult in Africa. The venture capital ecosystem is starting to pick up with growing investor interest, and entrepreneurship at scale drives impact and accelerates socio-economic growth for Africa. So these are the trends and the background in which all of the work that we've been doing in the South African economy and in the African economy is actually hooked onto. So there's more than what I'm just highlighting in this slide, but one of the key investors in Africa from Nigeria said to me, Audrey, there's not a field that you can be creative in that is not greatly needed in Africa. So to be a funder in Africa is the best place to be because we need funding for everything. But here's a few nicely intellectual spaces where we know we can make a huge impact, and that is in energy, alternatives, and just energy transition. Just think about if you are always concentrating on the big players, then you will get the coal mine owners just to become wind farm owners. What have you changed in your economy? But if you can say, we want to do just energy transition, and you create a space where tech startups with data, artificial intelligence solutions, coupled with hardware, can enter the economy, you are changing the value chain. And I don't think enough people are thinking about it. In South Africa, we tend to take note of large corporates, and the startups are just not seen as a big force. While in Silicon Valley, they have changed the country forever, and they become the Googles and the Apples of the world. But we've just not taken note yet. Financial service, agricultural service, smart cities, logistics, education, just to mention one educational company, Go One, South African Black owner, but sitting in New York, partner in Australia, has just become a unicorn. And I wanted to find a unicorn because when I say the word, a lot of people don't know what it means. But in economic terms, unicorn is a company that has a turnover of more than $1 billion. So to translate in rands, more than 18 billion. And I missed the 0.5 part or the 15 times. I just made it 10 times, 18 now, I think I'm correct, $18 billion. That is an EdTech solution, Go One, South African owner, and we claim it as an African unicorn, but it sits in New York. So in education, there's a huge impact to be had. In health, there's a huge impact to be had. In entertainment, there's a huge impact to be had. And it can be driven from Africa. The solutions can come from here. So just look at that last sentence at the bottom of my slide. In 2018, Africa accounted for 1.6 billion in investments across 164 rounds of investments in early stage startups. In 2021, it surpassed 4 billion. And in March last year, we had 2 unicorns on the continent of Africa. In October, we had 10 unicorns. So I want you to take note. This is like a hockey curve that's happening right here. Take note. And this is where we need the creative economy to start thinking, how do we actually enable the growth of these impactful startups that has to start small, but finance them adequately so that they can grow fast, quick. And I'm saying you grow from nothing to a unicorn in 5 to 10 years. So it's not 40 years or 50 years. It is a fast thing that will change this economy and the African continent fast. So how are we contributing as a group of companies that started the SA Innovation Summit? We also have another firm called the Research Institute for Innovation and Sustainability, and now Anza Capital. So basically, in a group, we have tried to create an ecosystem which very much speaks to the triple helix that we try to do in society, but somehow we struggle still to get it right. And that is that you need a space where tech startups are originated. And we have spent as an economy billions of rands in the incubator space. I think we've got between 300 and 400 incubators in South Africa. I don't think so many technology incubators, and more universities are also associating with incubators. But yet, we still don't have this huge engine of origination. So at the Innovation Summit, we collaborated with all the incubators that want to collaborate. Not everybody wants to collaborate, but everybody who wants to come together to talk about best practice in this space. And then we choose 60 to 80 best tech startups and we showcase them to the world every year. And then we invite investors, not just from Africa, because there's not enough money, $42 trillion too little, but across the world. And for many years, a lot of deals have been made in the early stages, pre-commercial and just as they enter the market. But then the deal is made, then you still need deep industry connections to open doors. You need talent support, you need strategy support, you need marketing and sales support, you need financial modeling support, legal support, and to make these tech startups investment ready so that they can actually engage with investment to grow their companies. So there's a lot of work here. It's not just the money. You actually need to get all of these things right. So we did a lot of capacity building. We built the Tech Tribe Accelerator. And this RIS is our connection with the industry, the mining houses, the oil and gas places that needs modernization. We're in space tech, we're in agriculture. So we feed, as we originate and we invest, we feed these companies into large business because they need contracts to actually grow significantly. And that's the little ecosystem that we built, and we hope to scale this significantly across Africa. But that's the collaboration that you need also in society. So you need government to be able to deal with small business, not just grants, but actually invest and do business with them. Large corporates to deal with small business, not just car washes, but actually artificial intelligence businesses, great new products in food tech, the things that universities overall deliver and our creative economy deliver. So how do we buy those super intelligent products instead of just buying them from overseas? Can we buy them locally? So that's the creative economy on the go. And to concentrate just on one side will never complete this cycle. You need the creators, then you need the enablers, then you need the implementers. And you all know that triple helix thinking. But this is what we created in our minute scale as a contributing agent into South Africa mainly, but also playing into Africa. So just a few stats about the Innovation Summit, 3,700 per year footfall. We, lots of companies. An interesting stat there at the bottom. We get about 1,600 applicants a year for tech startups. 33% of them are women, just stating that. 67% are male-based. And an interesting thing, just to punt women a little bit here, or tell what we have to overcome, is only 3% of all funding goes to female businesses, yet 33% of them are in the tech startup space. So an interesting one. And here is what our ecosystem produced. And I want you to take note of this, because some of these startups came from universities and many didn't come from universities. So these are startups that came through our pipeline at the Innovation Summit. And at the bottom, you will see Year X, for instance. Year X is a spin out from the Pretoria University, and Year X now is in 52 countries. They created the app that can test hearing disabilities on a cell phone, and they are in their Series D funding. That is a huge amount of funding. Ozo was iPay when they won the Innovation Summit, and Ozo just raised $49 million. So times that by 18 or 15, I don't know what the exchange rate is, to get your rand value. And you can see the type of funding companies need to grow. And then you start to understand, when you think small business, oh, Shane, that is like a 200,000 rand investment. No. Tech startups need millions of rands to grow where they are. I just mentioned a Series D investment. Series A is anything from 2 million, which is 24 million. Seed is anything from 1 million to 5 to 10 million rand. So I think the understanding of what a tech startup means and requires are just completely missing in our instruments at the moment. Everything we do is like minute little drops, and the scale is just not there. But here we see a few numbers. Aerobotics, I think a lot of people know about aerobotics, agricultural solutions, $17 million. Yerix raised their Series D. I don't know the number. They don't always disclose their numbers. Y Group, Series D, and Ozo just $48 million. And then in the beginning phase, Akiba, like a spin out from UCT. Last year, they were part of our FemTech program. And this student from UCT went through a lot of incubation programs and ultimately raised $1 million. Total startup, I think they were 6 months in the market, $1 million. That means 18 million rand to get them to grow from C to Series A. And that money came from overseas. So that is something that still frustrates me, that most of this money comes from overseas and not locally. And we will only really claim our success stories when we start investing in our own tech startups. And here's our pipeline from 2020 and 2021. So in the 3 years, you will see that the success stories will start to emerge. Like the timeline is 5 to 10 years. And all of these companies that are successful, relatively successful, or incredibly successful come from South Africa, and a few, when we run an inter-African competition, they come from Africa as well. This work impacts on so many sustainable development goals: quality education, gender equality. We've got clean water and sanitation, so many energy solutions that come through this early stage work, because it is the dreamers that become the creators. They might not become the CEOs ultimately, but without them, there won't be a startup. Good jobs and economic growth, innovation in infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and climate action, life on land, and ultimately tech startups can actually influence all of the SDGs. But we track some of them and we report against them. So in our first fund, and our ambition is to create at least 10 funds, I guess then I'll be too old, you know, but that's the vision I want to contribute still in the next 15 years, 15 to 25 years. Our focus will be food technology, green, and edtech, or digital Africa. And now I just want to talk about SADC. I mentioned the population is a 1.2 billion market. We also need to look at legislation. We've got a free trade zone that makes it much more attractive for overseas money to come into South Africa. We've got payment solutions that go across all these borders. At the Innovation Summit, we sell tickets to 56 countries, and most of them in Africa. So people who say, I cannot sell to the rest of Africa, you're making a mistake. Most countries have solutions that can buy from you. Talent, I think South Africa is really good at talent, but also with COVID, you know that where you have a shortage, you can actually recruit from anywhere in the world, if it's possible for you to run your business. So if you don't get local talent, you can recruit from anywhere or train. The ecosystem I've mentioned, I think we still have a lack of private sector government collaboration. It's getting better. I think we've got more legislation in that space, like the TTO offices, we've got the R&D tax incentive, and more. But the ecosystem still needs a lot of trust and co-visioning to really shift the dial. And then the finance I've now addressed, the big lack is early stage finance. It's a big problem, $48 trillion too little. And then something that I'm spending a lot of time on at the moment is to get the investors to understand the African landscape, to adapt the way of thinking how funds must work to an African mindset, and then our pipeline to be investment ready, to understand what investors want. And life is not just about grants, but life can actually be much more compatible when we get alignment between expectations and offerings. So we're working to both sides in our lobby and capacitation work to try and sort out this early stage gap in the market. So just to remind you of a few statistics that makes this space really interesting to play in, is you will see that the age spread between Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Africa is over 50. In Africa, we have 11% versus Europe, 40%. So if you create products for the youth, you should do exceptionally well in Africa. Then 29% is the really mature population, 25 to 50, 29%, and then below 25, 60%. So just look at your population and then you will know what type of products are important to deliver in this economy, Africa and South Africa. And then that is what makes the space so interesting, and why so many investors are coming to look, and then they don't know how to engage and they leave again. But I see that coming back, and there's more and more landing spaces for them in Africa. South Africa is at the moment number 2 for tech startup spending and ecosystem building. The 4 front runners is Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. We were number 4, but somehow we are making up, and last year we landed at number 2 in spending on tech startups. And then the spaces that are running before anything else in Africa is fintech. Like I said, we're world leaders in fintech. You know, Pesa in Kenya, Ozo in South Africa, PayFast, you name it. There's so many solutions that compete with each other. Then EdTech, I gave you the example of the unicorn, and then energy. So health tech, EdTech, energy. These are the 4 front runners because they can be delivered online, a lot of it, through drones, through clever technologies, and that's what makes the tech startup space so really attractive. And here is investor interest is by all-time high. Just look at the number of investors between 2017 and 2019. We started with 20, and now we have 7 in 2019, 70, and I can tell you now it doubled in almost every year. I think we're at 120% growth last year. And then total venture capital in Africa in USD millions, just look at that upward curve. And then global venture capital funding by region. Can you see that this is the upward curve? And then if you look at the world, we're still that low. So any investor that has found saturation in North America and is looking at Asia and Africa, it is the new growth market. It is the exciting place. A lot of investors just don't know how to play in Africa. And that's where we must stand up as locals and take hands with the globe. So can you see what a massive opportunity this is? So in 15 years of running the Innovation Summit and building the Research Institute for Innovation and Sustainability in South Africa, and the last 2 years building this fund and learning how to invest in tech startups, I've got a few things that I've seen over and over, and what I'm saying might not be new to you, but I want to share this because it is my life's work, and I think it's valid to just be reminded of it, because we get so busy with what we're busy with, writing books, writing research papers, that we forget a few principles that can really make a difference in our world, in the innovation space, in the space where we commercialize and let our research products and our technology products actually make a huge difference in society by getting them in the hands of people who can pay for them and use them. So I think this is something 15 years ago when I said it, people thought, oh, I can't hear this, they don't like it when I say this. But I'm saying it now with much more authority and learning. Learn to work and respect the private sector for its drive, not for its money. It's interesting when we work with big private sector, it's always with the big banks, with Samsung or with big corporates. It's kind of, we just want their money. In society, there's a much more important part that private sector brings, and that is drive for implementation. And that's what we need to work with. And that can come in the form of very small businesses and single entrepreneurs. So we need to respect the drive that private sector brings, because we've got a distance between the academic sector, the government sector, and the private sector. And if we can make that switch, it will be much easier to work with small startups. Then work on market readiness. I work intensely with universities that are spinning out their tech startups, or trying to spin out their tech startups, with government investors into tech startups. But even from an investment perspective, especially in South Africa, we look more to the product and the technology than the market readiness. And we need acumen to start to invest in products that has a product readiness, a technology readiness, and a market readiness. So we've got the TRL levels. I think most people in this audience really know what that is. But can we now move to the MRL levels, market readiness, and in equal parts assess the viability of a project? And then work on investment readiness. I said investment readiness and investor readiness. So work with investors and let them start to speak your language. Understand what it takes to get out of a university or a research institute into the market. What are the time frames? How long does it take to come to a minimum viable product? So let them start to understand your language, because then the money will become earlier as well. So it's a communication to both sides. Investment readiness, does the startups at the universities understand how to talk to investors? And does investors understand how to talk to the tech startups? And there is not enough early stage money for commercialization. It is a massive gap. So if we don't do it locally, we'll have to go and get the money overseas. And I'm not opposed to the one or the other, but awareness of what it takes is completely missing. We're thinking very small. We don't understand the lack for tech startups in this space. There's not enough early stage support for budding tech entrepreneurs. So apart from the money lack, there's also this: we don't understand the market. We don't know what it means to be a CEO. We don't know how to build a venture. We don't know how to make the product acceptable to the customer. So there's a lot of lack of skills that can just be found online and with a little bit of effort, because there's not a lack of skills in the world for that. And then stop categorizing tech startups and small business as one. They are very different. And I've been speaking to CEDA about this. I know there's a massive drive for the Startup Act to start recognizing the term startup is not for anybody who starts a business. It is for tech startups that start a business. It's the future Googles and Apples and Amazons that come from this continent. They are not the same. as somebody who's starting a hairdresser, and I've got nothing against a hairdresser. I love my hairdresser. They are very important for the economy. Small business is very important, but they're not the same as a tech startup. And we have made them the same through our legislation, through our actions, through our language. There's a huge thing that can be shifted when we start to understand there are two different categories and they should be treated very differently. And then the big thing is, in South Africa, we are part of Africa. It's a massive market and we're part of the world. So that global mindset, and that we've got the talent to address this, and that we can co-create with the world, will change everything from Africa to the world instead of from the world to Africa. And that's what our mission is, and I hope I've inspired one or two of you to be with us on this. And I'm looking forward to the next 25 years where South Africa and Africa is going to dance better together, and we are taking our products to the world.